Okay. Now, as we go on, there's a few other things we've got to throw into the mix. One of the things that you can't solve is grief. It's got to be grieved. Like you can't fix it. You got to, when you've had a tree in the backyard that's been chopped down and taken away, you've got a stump there. What are you going to do? You can't get the tree back. And that's what it's like in grief, right? And now, so there's already a lot written on grief, which is very good, and you can work through most of that. And all I want to talk about is grief in the context and the construct of the flow of life. Right? So Belle, could you come here for a second? And so, if you are in a relationship with somebody, you have a flow of life, okay? So this is my partner, my wife, Belle. So Belle's there, you have a flow of life, right? And every couple knows that flow of life. It can go up, it can go down, it flows, right? Now then, for whatever reason, Belle dies or is not there, here I am, and my soul is looking for that flow of life. You with me? And it flows out of me into the dust. And that is inconsolable pain. Now that can happen. That can happen in a partner relationship. That happens in divorce. So one of the things that we do in divorce is the same process of what we're going to be talking about, help people there, but happens in death. Okay, so it's not merely the fact that I don't have someone with me, right? It's not just like I've got a new car or something. There's actually a life flow. The Zoe that you were sharing together, the Zoe that was flowing between your life and existence, is no longer there. And that causes chest pain because the flow is like out of the chest. Thanks, Bill. Does that make sense? So when you're dealing with that, there's a number of things. Firstly, one of the things we found useful for people is to reconstruct the person. Okay? So you build a montage. So you get them to reconstruct the person almost in the light of a oh wow, this is great. Look at this. Okay. That's right, yeah. So what you do is, that'll do it. So I won't spend time on this, guys, but what you do, you reconstruct a montage. So you go and get photos, might get audios, whatever you can, to reconstruct that person in three-dimensional things. Why are you doing that? Because you're going to get all the parts of you by which you're missing that person to re-engage. Right? You reconstruct that person or the thing that you're missing in a way that is deeply as possible, right? And then what you've got to do is, when all that's there, you've got to say what you've got to say to that person. How much you love them, how much you're annoyed by them, how much you miss them, how much you wish this, ABC, all the realities of life. You reconstruct them, and then you say what you've got to say. Right? And then once you've done the montage, reconstructed, and you feel all of you has been involved in that process, we then have a very simple prayer. And we ask that the soul tie the connection between that person and you, we ask that soul tie is closed off. Because the person has already died and gone, and it's not connected in this realm. And you bleed out. Your soul bleeds out. And it's sitting here in pain. The person's alive on the other side. They've passed through the veil. But when they pass through the veil, while we have times you might be aware of them, you are not connected to them like you were on earth. They have changed places.
Can you not be more connected to them because they are loving you unconditionally?
Totally. There's a change in relationship.
So why do you need to have this bleeding out business? Like, why do you need to disconnect them?
Well, no, the people are bleeding out. If you've got no grief and no bleeding out, you don't need to do it. Is the person more alive than they were here? Yes. We are the grey ones. They are now more alive than we are. You'd even say they are solid and we are the ghosts. Why do you say that? Because when Jesus was raised from the dead, he walked through walls. In other words, the walls weren't solid for him. And yet, while he was walked through walls, he ate fish, which to us was solid, so he wasn't a spook. So he was more solid than solid. Right? So he could walk through the wall and eat fish. So he's super solid, and we're the ghosts. All right? Sorry? The wall, yeah, the wall, our dimension is like an apparition, right? So if someone you've loved has died and moved on and you don't have pain, you don't need to do it. But as has been said, you can have experiences where you're aware of them because they're alive in Jesus, right? Once a person's died, they're more alive than we are. They're sharing in Jesus' resurrection, all right? They're more alive. You may or may not have awareness of them. There's plenty of stories, if you work around palliative care, where people are thought, this, the veil business and the awareness business, right? Now, but if someone's died and you're sitting here in this grief, pain, and your life's going into the dust, that soul tie just needs to be closed off, right? Ask the question, in closing off that soul tie, are you losing connection with that person? No, because they're not in this realm anymore. They've moved to another realm. Is that realm more real than this one? Yes. They're in the alive one. They're in the resurrected one. We're the ghosts and they're the solid. But while I'm sitting in this ghost realm and I'm bleeding out, you can close it off.
So you're closing off the soul tie here on Earth.
I'm closing off the ruptured, bleeding out, my end of the soul tie.
You're not wishing them away.
No wishing them away. It's already gone. They've died. The silver cord's been gone from this earth, right? And my side is still like a hose pouring out, looking for my beloved, looking for my things, looking for my connection. And that creates inconsolable pain in a person. And they have pain. And you find very simply, if you can reconstruct a montage of the person and you can say everything you need to say, so you're at peace, then you can say, okay, they're not here anymore. They're in a better place than we are. They're alive. We're in the land of the dying. They're in the land of the living. We're the ghosts. They're the solids. Holy Spirit, can you please close off this soul tie? And you'll find it close off, and you find your life's not pouring out, and you haven't got this experience of ongoing death and pain. And basically, it's the same as when Jesus heals. We'll talk about the black hole and Jesus healing there. But my experience when he was healing my black hole was, where did the pain go? I'd lived with it all my life. Where did it go? Well, when you go through grief and he closes off that, you go, the pain's gone. Doesn't mean you don't love the person anymore. Don't love me, you don't have connection even in a different way anymore, but it means you're not suffering the pain.
Is that the same with broken relationships?
Next question, is that the same in broken relationships? Exactly. And in broken relationships, I don't pray that for people until I know that it's over and it's final, and but they will pray. But if they ask me to pray, I don't pray it with them until it's over. Anybody can pray it.
Yeah. So it's not like a witch doctor, you have to have a special person.
No. no witch doctor, no super spiritual. Yeah, as Belinda's saying, every soul is sacred. You don't fiddle with someone else's soul. There's no hierarchy in this. Every soul is sacred. You keep your fingers off people's souls.
But soul ties are so real and not just in the deep.
Yeah, and this is saying that there's a thing called soul tie. We are saying we are beings with a life flow, right? We're beings with a life flow made in by the Zoe, and we're not just bodies, right? And that connection is real.
So it doesn't mean that you don't miss that person, grieve, all of those things, but you just don't have that.
Right, correct. So from the floor, it's saying you don't miss, grieve, and have it. No, you don't. You're not cutting them and throwing them away, right? You still miss them and grieve them. You may be aware of them in another way, but it means that the inconsolable pain of it is gone, right? And you'll find the same works and relationships in this life. So that's the flow and the soul connections. Now,
releases the intensity of the pain. You don't stop thinking about them or missing them, but it releases that intense longing. Stop, cuts that off.
did you hear that from someone from the floor said it releases the intense longing, grieving, franticness gone. It's gone because your soul's not looking for that reciprocation in this level. Now, there is one thing which you need to start putting in here, and this is building towards something else, so listen very carefully. What you can do, if you've been in a relationship with somebody, or if somebody's been in a relationship with somebody, and there's been problems, and we do a thing called calling their life back. Now, that sounds pretty weird. What do you mean, like calling my life back, Bruce? Well, I'm more than my body. I have a flow of life in me, and in a relationship, there's life flow going both ways. That's really interesting because maybe if the person I'm with is plugged into some pretty dark things, maybe I'm experiencing that. If I'm plugged into dark things, maybe they're experiencing that. In the sharing of life, and because also, and we're moving towards the understanding of fragmentation and bits, if there's part of my life in the other person and part of their life in me, there needs to be a calling back of life. I'm just introducing a concept of calling back of life. It's still in the realm of Zoe, of life, in the realm of calling back of life. And you can pray that, and a very simple prayer, just pray, may all of my life come back to me. I have one proviso I put in, washed and cleaned in Jesus Christ, because I don't want whatever is attached to that person coming back with that life. And then when that's undertaken and all their life is taken out of me, we can ask that any soul ties like that can be closed and broken. Now there's a little bit thrown in as we head towards some other stuff later, all right? Any questions on that before we go further?
So Bruce, are you talking about like sexual relationships, or are you talking about just general relationships?
You don't have to have a sexual relationship to form a soul tie,
Yeah.
but a sexual relationship is a good way to create one, yeah.
Any codependency, any unhealthy.
Yeah, well, and it's not that they're bad things. You're meant to relate.
So what are you asking about the soul ties? I'm confused.
Right, what I'm saying is that when you meet people who are in trouble and trying to sort out their life, and their life is a mess, and they may have had various relationships of various forms, and that one of the things that you need to do is you need to re-establish soul boundaries. So if I'm the person, well, if the person's in trouble and they're not making grounds, it's a concept to look at, right? And so here we have a nice relationship, where people are relating and there's respect. Now, to move from here to get intimacy requires trust. Requires trust. Trust requires safety and virtues. Very simple. It's not very hard, is it? So, trust, safety and virtues to get there. Okay, so that's a lovely thing. But what happens when you've got a not so lovely thing, and you might have been in a person who's actively participating with darkness or various things, and they're actually playing around with that, and then at the soul level, at the level of Zoe, you're suddenly in a pipeline.
So can that include, say, someone who is a narcissist or is sociopathic or...
Well, yeah. Well, I'm not.
You might have dealt with?
Yeah, I'm not going to get prescriptive on what it does and doesn't include. I'm more into the concept, but yes, if the person's not getting better, it's useful to look at what are the pipelines into the person. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to just merely establish a boundary. If that's got pipes off it and connections elsewhere, that poor person can have all sorts of influences on them. Now, is pipeline the correct concept? I don't know. We'll talk more about that later, because there's issues of fields and all sorts of things we can go into. But it's the issue of maintaining the boundary integrity of the person. A boundary integrity. So you're not affected by other people or things. And that's very helpful for the healing of the soul. If you're going to spend time digging through this thing, trying to work on that, right, work with them, and they've got boundary problems where all sorts of things might be coming in, that becomes a bit more complicated. It's a bit like trying to clean a house with all the windows open and dust coming through.
So you've been talking about two things. One is the loss of a life, and then also deep relationships where the people are still...
Yeah, and we slid from one to the other, yeah.
They've sort of spoken together.
Okay.
You've got two concepts happening.
Well, we did slide from one to the other. So we have been talking about grief, and then we've then moved from then into relationships as per the question, right? And then this is relationships with people alive now, yep.
Aren't there good soul ties, though, here on Earth?
Totally, I'm not saying they're bad. We're just talking about the issue of if you've got problems and darkness.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so what are we saying? We're saying this is part of creation. This is how things are built. Oh, so what you're saying, Bruce, this is how things are built. Oh, this might be one of the doorways by which magic works. Absolutely. Are we meant to play with that? Well, if you're going to move into control, you're in darkness. Oh, can this operate in love? Absolutely. Have you ever had somebody who you know and care for, you're aware of what's happening to them? And you can pray for them, care for them. You see, this is how things are built. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, but it can be operated on within darkness, and we just need to sort of understand that. What I'm trying to do is remove from your brains the concept of evil as another entity. I'm trying to say darkness or evil is merely blindness in what is good. Does that make sense? So you don't have a... Correct. And so we don't get all mystical and fearful and weird about the occult. Occult just means hidden. This stuff is playing with Zoe.
And most of our frames have been dualistic, as we tried to
Yeah.
say before, right, Bruce?
Yeah, the frames are dualistic. So just say it again. If you're meeting a good witch or a good wizard, they're playing with Zoe. My goodness, they're playing with the life of Christ flowing in the universe. But they're not doing it in love necessarily. Oh my goodness. Well, they're not. This is not just meeting this all-powerful force. This is a fiddler. Someone fiddling with the life of Christ. And then you have a different take on how you approach people involved in dark arts and mysteries, and how you can share the gospel with them. Do you realise that what you're playing with and what you're doing, and have you thought about love versus just power? Because they're playing with power and fiddling with the universe, pulling the strings of the universe, but they're not operating in love. But it also means, therefore, on the corollary, we don't have to be scared or fearful of it. And we'll talk more about that as we get into it. So the first thing was, back to the death of a person, you've got someone you love and you need to remember them, create a montage, and then be able to speak to them and relate with them at all the different levels you can, right? And then if necessarily, get your soul connection, which is gone because they've moved on. Your side's just open and bleeding. Your side needs closing. It's your side. You're bleeding. You're looking. You're flowing. Okay? And then that got transferred from a question into a relationship. Is that what happens when a relationship ruptures? Yes. And then that can also be closed off. And we added one further step, which was that you can also call your life back. And the importance of that and how that can change things. Okay. Now the next thing, you're just dealing topics here now, and these topics are trying to help us move towards bits we have to be able to process, because as you come into some of the stuff down here, you need to be able to grieve. If you can't grieve, you're not going to get over some spins. You have to be able to let things go. But then you've got injustice. How do you let go of things when it's not fair?